0 o'clock to 2 o'clock, cold open and introduction. Narrator, February 2013, Los Angeles, California. The Cecil Hotel stands on South Main Street like a scar on the city's skin. 14 stories of crumbling history, stained walls, and secrets buried beneath decades of tragedy. It was built in 1924 with dreams of grandeur. What it became was something far darker. On February 19, 2013, guests at the Cecil Hotel began complaining about the water. It tasted strange. It looked darker than it should. The pressure had dropped. Maintenance was called. A worker climbed to the rooftop. He opened the hatch on one of the large black water tanks sitting under the California sun. What he found inside would shock the world. The body of a 21-year-old woman, floating, decomposed, partially unclothed. She had been there for nearly 3 weeks. Her name was Elisa Lam, a Canadian student from Vancouver, British Columbia. A young woman who kept a Tumblr blog filled with books, travel photos, and quiet reflections about her life. A daughter, a dreamer, someone who should have had decades ahead of her. She checked into the Cecil Hotel on January 28, 2013, at the beginning of what was supposed to be a solo travel adventure along the West Coast. She never checked out. But it wasn't just the discovery of her body that sent the internet into a frenzy of obsession. It was the footage. Surveillance footage released by the Los Angeles Police Department that showed Elisa Lam's final known moments alive. Footage so bizarre, so deeply unsettling, that it raised more questions than it answered, and those questions have never fully gone away. 2 o'clock to 4 o'clock, the hotel and its history narrator. To understand what happened to Elisa Lam, you first have to understand where she was staying. Because the Cecil Hotel is not just a building. It is a graveyard wearing a facade of bricks and glass. Opened during the height of the Roaring '20s, the Cecil was designed as an upscale destination for business travelers and tourists. But as Los Angeles changed, so did the Cecil. By the 1950s, it had transformed into a budget hotel catering to transient workers and those with nowhere else to go. It sat in the heart of Skid Row, one of the most impoverished and desperate urban neighborhoods in America. And the deaths began. Over the course of its history, the Cecil Hotel became associated with an almost incomprehensible number of tragedies. Multiple suicides by guests who leaped from its windows, at least 2 murders within its walls. In 1964, a woman known as Pigeon Goldie Osgood was found raped, stabbed, and beaten in her room. Her killer was never conclusively identified, but perhaps most chillingly, the Cecil Hotel served as a residence for 2 of America's most notorious serial killers. Richard Ramirez, the Night Stalker, lived on the 14th floor during his 1985 killing spree. He would reportedly return to the hotel after his murders, discarding his bloody clothes in the dumpster behind the building, and just a few years later, Jack Unterweger, an Austrian serial killer who posed as a journalist, stayed at the Cecil while murdering prostitutes in the area. This was the place Elisa Lam chose for her solo adventure. Whether she knew its history or not, she walked through those doors on January 28th with a backpack, a sense of curiosity, and no idea that she would never leave. Initially, she was placed in a shared hostel-style room, but other guests complained about her erratic behavior, her strange manner of speaking. She was moved to a private room, alone. She kept in touch with her family, regular check-ins, phone calls, messages. Then, on February 1st, 2013, contact stopped. Her parents contacted police. A missing persons report was filed, and the Cecil Hotel became the center of a massive investigation that would grip the entire world. 4 o'clock to 6 o'clock, the elevator video narrator. For nearly 3 weeks, investigators searched. They canvassed the hotel. They interviewed guests and staff. They reviewed hours of surveillance footage. The hotel's rooftop had been checked. The water tanks had been checked, or so they claimed. And then, on February 14, 2013, the LAPD released a piece of footage to the public. A desperate plea for information. A last resort. The footage was from a hotel elevator security camera, time-stamped from the early morning hours of February 1st, the last day anyone had contact with Elisa Lam. What the video showed defied easy explanation. Elisa Lam enters the elevator alone. She presses multiple buttons. The elevator doors don't close. She steps out, looks down the hallway in both directions as if checking for someone, then steps back inside. She presses herself against the elevator wall. She looks frightened, or paranoid, or both. Then she steps out again. She walks to the left, just outside the camera's frame, returns, steps back in, presses more buttons, and then comes the most chilling part of the footage. She begins moving her hands, slowly, deliberately, in ways that seem disconnected from any rational thought. Her fingers curl and gesture in motions that look almost ritualistic. Her head tilts, her expressions shift in ways that are difficult to categorize. She appears to be talking, possibly to someone outside the elevator frame, someone the camera cannot see, and then she walks away, down the hallway, out of frame, forever. The elevator doors finally close, with no one inside. The video went viral almost instantly. Millions of views, millions of theories. The footage was eerie not just because of what it showed, but because of what it implied. Elisa Lam was terrified of something, or someone, and whatever it was, the camera couldn't capture it. Crucially, the elevator appeared to be malfunctioning. The doors stayed open far longer than they should have. Some investigators suggested the elevator was in a kind of hold mode, possibly activated by holding a button. Others couldn't explain it at all. The malfunction added another layer of disorientation to footage that was already deeply disturbing. 6 o'clock to 8 o'clock. The impossible question: how did she get in the tank? Narrator: when Elisa Lam's body was recovered from the rooftop water tank on February 19th, investigators faced a question that seemed to have no satisfying answer. How did she get there? The rooftop of the Cecil Hotel was not accessible from guest areas. It required passing through a fire door that was alarmed. Guests were not supposed to be able to reach the roof, and even if someone somehow bypassed that alarm, the water tanks themselves presented an entirely different problem. The tanks were large and industrial. They stood several feet tall. To enter one, a person would need to climb up the exterior, open a hatch on top that was reported to be difficult to operate, lower themselves inside, and then close the hatch behind them. That last part is the detail that burrowed into the minds of investigators and internet obsessives alike. The hatch was found closed, latched, from the outside. This is the locked room mystery at the heart of the Elisa Lam case. A door that cannot be closed from the inside. A woman found inside. No evidence of anyone else involved. The LAPD conducted an exhaustive investigation. They examined every inch of the rooftop, the tanks, the access routes. They reviewed all available footage. They interviewed every staff member and guest. They found no evidence of a second person, no signs of a struggle, no defensive wounds on Elisa's body. Her toxicology report revealed traces of several prescription medications, including medications she had been prescribed for bipolar disorder. There were no signs of sexual assault, no signs of homicidal violence. The Los Angeles County Coroner ruled her death an accidental drowning. The manner of death was listed as accidental, with the bipolar disorder listed as a significant contributing condition, but that ruling satisfied almost no one, because the physical logistics of how a woman could end up inside a latched water tank on a secured rooftop, without any help, without leaving any clear trail, without setting off a door alarm, remained deeply, profoundly unclear. And those who worked at the hotel, those who knew the building, offered explanations that only deepened the mystery. Some said the rooftop door alarm had been broken for years. Others said guests sometimes accessed the roof. The story kept shifting. The foundation kept crumbling. 8 o'clock to 10 o'clock, theories, obsessions, and dark tourism. Narrator: when the official explanation fails to satisfy, the internet fills the vacuum. And in the case of Elisa Lam, the internet did not simply fill it. It consumed it entirely. Theories multiplied in the weeks and months after her death. Some were grounded in logic and legitimate forensic questioning. Others descended into something much darker. The supernatural theory gained traction almost immediately after the elevator video went public. Commenters pointed to Elisa's hand movements as evidence of demonic possession, spirit communication, or paranormal interference. The Cecil Hotel's history of tragedy was cited as evidence of a cursed location. The timing of certain events was mapped onto numerological patterns. The theories were elaborate, emotionally compelling, and almost entirely without evidential foundation. But they spread with the velocity of wildfire. On the more grounded side, Many true crime investigators and amateur sleuths question the official narrative persistently. How did the fire door alarm fail to alert anyone? Why did multiple searches of the roof fail to locate her body for almost 3 weeks? Why were certain segments of the elevator footage reported to be edited?